Welcome to Upfront. I'm Rachel O'Sullivan. Earlier this week, I flew out to Canada for the launch of the Northern Super League, Canada's first ever women's professional soccer league. The visionary behind it all is former Canada international Diana Matheson. She's a co-founder of a sports management company called Project 8, who own the league alongside the 6 clubs involved and will run the league too. One of those 6 clubs is Calgary Wild, who played Vancouver Rise in the inaugural match yesterday. Ahead of the game, I sat down with Calgary coach Lydia Bedford. Now, you may remember that name because Lydia was the WSL assistant coach of Arsenal, as well as the Leicester manager, so she's definitely a familiar face. I wanted to find out what attracted her to this position and the potential of the league. Stick around for what promises to be a fascinating chat. Welcome to the pod. Thank you so much for joining us. For our listeners' benefit, we are sitting pitchside in BC Place. I'm hoping maybe this is your last bit of media you have to do. You've just done your final session. This must feel like you're a kid on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, that's exactly how I've described it to a lot of people. 11 weeks is a long time coming. And at the same time, it feels like it's flown by. And there's moments where I'm like, how have we got to this point this quickly? But there's been a lot of hard work over the last 11 weeks. And now I think, especially when you finish match day -1 session, as a coach, there's not much more I can do. Maybe a little bit of game management with them tomorrow morning just to remind them. But they know the plan. It's just about them stepping on the pitch, enjoying it and executing it now.
I guess we have to rewind a little bit, for our listeners' benefit. You've been at Brentford, Arsenal women, Leicester women. You've done youth groups with England. Most recently, I think we saw you at the under-17s in Dominican Republic. Why Canada?
Yeah, I think I went to the World Cup with the under-17s. And Brentford let me do that and the under-19s Euros last year and paid me whilst I was at both events and covered me whilst I was gone. So when I got back into work in kind of early November, in my mind I was kind of saying to England, look, if you need me again, you might have to wait a little bit longer before we ask this time. And I probably need to get my footing back in at club. But then it was only I think the first week of December when my agent messaged me out the blue and said, look, this opportunity's come up. Would you like to have a conversation with them? And I suppose the one thing I've learned in the last 4 or 5 years is that you don't say no to opportunities to have conversations. If you then decide that it's not right, then fine. But I think you should always listen and hear. And I actually sat and did the call at Brentford one afternoon about 4 o'clock when most people left the building. And I logged on. I didn't do any prep for the call because I just thought, well, this is really bad timing. And I ended up speaking to 3 women who, in my opinion, were badass and had a real passion for what they were doing. And that was Lara, our CEO, Lisa, our CFO, and Alex, our sporting director. And I just sat back and listened to what they were trying to build and where they were at and, what they'd done from a recruitment perspective. And I think I just fell in love with the energy that they had for the project straight from the start. And then I went away from it and I wasn't really sure what the right decision was, mainly because my mum had just been diagnosed with lymphoma cancer. I knew she was about to start chemo over Christmas. And from a family perspective, we'd just been talking about, how do we step up our support for mum and dad can't cook and those types of things. But then my first conversation with my parents was actually on the car to Wembley when the under-17s paraded the pitch that day. And we were driving from my Brentford game that they'd come to watch that morning. And I said, look, this has come up. What do you think? And they were very much have the conversation and let's just see. And that's been the philosophy, just listen and see how it feels. And I was actually really lucky 3 times as a teenager. My parents took me on holiday to Canada, to the East Coast. So I fell in love with the country at a really young age. We used to do holidays. It was like a family friend who owned this little cottage and there was no running water. You had to go to the toilet outside. There was just random swing and you showered under a tree, which sometimes I joke with the players because facilities are a challenge in Calgary. So I'm like, we could put one of those showers up in the tree and you could use that. But yeah, I loved the country. I loved the nature and I was lucky to come back again in 2023 before I started work for Brentford. So if there was ever to be a country that I really wanted to live in and just experience culture, the Canadians are such friendly people. I remember as a kid, you went to the store and you'd say thank you, and they'd always respond, you're welcome. And it always took me by surprise because in England, no one says it.
Absolutely not.
So there was just that feeling of, do you know what? It's such a cool country. They speak English. I can't speak any other languages, which is a real bad thing. But let's just go and try something different. And when I went into Leicester, you're in a situation where you inherit a playing group, you inherit a culture, and for all of the work you try to do, that's quite hard to change. And this is, although I came late, so obviously there's some things that are in place, this is just, a fresh canvas. And from everything I've learned over the last 10 years, I felt like, why not take myself out of my comfort zone and go and try it? Be brave, life's short. I get to go tobogganing and coach football in the same day.
We're going to get to that. We are definitely going to get to that. But I know you'd been, as you said, to Canada before, and you'd come to the West Coast quite recently, but you hadn't been to Calgary, except to fly out of. So how have you experienced life in Calgary, and what's it been like having to transport your whole life here? Because it's not easy, and maybe it's something we don't actually give credit to, not just coaches, but players as well, in a brand new league. It's a whole lot of people coming into a new place.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the club's been brilliant in terms of trying to help and support that process. I visited for 3 days in January and did media, and was able to tour around a few apartments and at least like start to work out where I was going to live before I came. But it has given me a renewed appreciation of how hard it is for players coming into new countries and having to set up base. You almost feel like you never existed somewhere else, and you've just got to recreate, in that country. So I remember being at Leicester and one player once walking in who we'd signed from New Zealand, and basically she was really struggling to get car insurance, and she asked me if I could go on a car insurance, and I was like, no, you need to speak to one of the players and see if someone can help you. But I probably didn't really appreciate how tough that was. In my mind, you recruit a player and they just hit the ground running. But having now experienced that as a coach, it's really tough. And like for that first week, I didn't have Wi-Fi. People want to do interviews and I'm having to go and find somewhere I could do them. Getting a credit card, having money on it to be able to spend, getting paid by the employer. I think I didn't get paid for about 6 weeks. So they're all things that if you don't have a SIN number, you can't get paid. You can't get a SIN number for 10 days after you arrive. So yeah, there is a lot that goes on. But from a Calgary perspective, the thing that Lara and Lisa and Alex kept repeating to me was that it's sunny 333 days of the year. So this is the information they gave me. And obviously, I love water. There's a river. The Bow River runs through the city. And in the summer, people float down it, apparently on rubber rings, which is going to be cool. I can't wait to do that. So that and the mountains and the opportunity to go skiing on your doorstep. They really sold a sprawling city where there's loads of outdoor things. The dog can go for a walk down the river every day. And then I arrived to -20 and I was like...
They lied.
Yeah, every time I came. So the 3 days in January were freezing. And then when I arrived on the 20, I think it was the 29th of January, it was -20 degrees. And it stayed like that for about 8-9 days. And I could literally, every time I breathed in, I could feel the hair in my nostrils. And I mean, I was a bit like, where's the sunshine too? Because the sun didn't really come out to start with. But now, having been here a little bit longer, everyone back home's like, how are you surviving? I'm getting an ice cream at -1 degrees because I'm like, there's this place called Village Ice Cream. It's the best ice cream in Calgary. It's about 2 minutes from my apartment, which is a real downfall. But when we first arrived, me and my assistant Sinead were driving around and you'd see people with hats and gloves eating ice cream. And I was like, weirdos. And then a month in, I'm like, should we go and get an ice cream?
Yeah.
Treat ourselves for the day. So yeah, it's a really friendly city. I think actually the hardest thing was getting the dog over here.
Yeah.
So little old Baxter, he's now managed to make it into the Jersey launch because he just came that night. But when I first started speaking to the club, I thought it would be as easy as just put him in cargo and fly on the same flight. And then there was a debate with my parents, do I leave him as a bit of a therapy dog for mum? And then she had a PICC line put in at Christmas and they told her that she couldn't walk the dog because of it. So then I was like, right, literally as I flew out in January, I was like, I think I need to rethink this because originally I was going to leave him till June time. And I was like, I think I need to take him at the end of January. So it was all action stations, try and find out how he flies. Impossible to find an answer. Websites are really unclear. So in the end, I had to use a travel company who obviously charge you through the roof. It cost me $5,000 for him to fly out.
Wow. But I imagine worth it in terms of you settling down. And we are going to get into your sledding exploits with Baxter before we wrap up. But we should probably talk a little bit about the football, the club. And I guess not only a brand new canvas club-wise, but it's kind of a brand new canvas league-wise as well, which must be super exciting because you're in a country that's really developed sports-wise and you've got a nation that really embraces sports and sporting culture. So it's quite a unique opportunity to be building a league from the ground up and building a squad from the ground up. So that must be quite exciting.
Yeah, I think that, and Diana's got great experience in the game and is trying to build this league so that it's ahead of other leagues in terms of what it offers players. It's taken years for other leagues to give maternity cover for players, and things like that are just normal for us in this league right from the start. So it is really special in the way that it's being built and the way that is really quite player centered, and just it's exciting. I mean, it's a massive country. This is our shortest journey for an away game. When we got off the flight, I was like, oh, we've done that one, but it was only an hour and a half. In
Toronto, different story.
Yeah, well, in our next away game is Halifax. That's a 6-hour flight and a whole day of travel. So it really does challenge you from a from a coaching perspective, even just conversations with the players around how we would facilitate that. I've learnt a little bit on, like, we've got Meggie who's played in the NWSL, Sarah's joined us. They will have done an element of travel, but even that isn't quite the same as some of the extremes of our travel. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that evolves. And then obviously only having 6 teams in the league, that's a really interesting one. I mean, I think for some players, when I try to recruit them, it's something that could put them off. But we play more games in our season than the WSL does, if that makes sense, based on playing everyone 5 times. And I think it's a really cool challenge as a coach, because tactically you can't just expect to play Toronto 5 times the same way and you get the same result every time, because everyone's going to have footage and be learning and getting better. So I love the tactical side of the game. So I'm actually really looking forward to that challenge of, how can we tweak things on week to week, and how can we keep a little bit of surprise back for oppositions as we play them. But it's just different. And I think as a coach, you want to experience so many different things in your journey that help you prepare for whatever comes next.
And I guess there's a lot of learnings, not just on the field, but off the field, logistically. You touch on a 6-hour flight there. There was talk of you maybe walking to the game tomorrow, but you very quickly put that to bed.
Yeah, that was a funny one. So KG, our team manager, she's brilliant. But we were just looking at, the schedule, and she'd put down we were going to use a chartered bus on, I think, Monday and Thursday, which Thursday's when we leave. And I was like, what are we doing on Wednesday? She was like, walking. I was like, we can't walk. But yeah, I think that everyone who works for this club has a real heart for doing the right thing by the players. And at the same time, for a lot of people, it's brand new. Like, they haven't worked in a pro environment. They're learning as they go. And like, that's quite fun as a coach. And sometimes it creates those little moments where you're like, it's probably not how we should do things. Like, we played a friendly in Denver, and we did a pre-match meal, and it was like a Greek, brought in to the hotel from like a takeaway restaurant. And I was like, we're eating Greek for pre-match? But then I was like, maybe this is normal here. And I just need to give it a second and not maybe react straight away. And then after the game, a couple of the players were like, don't think Greek was appropriate. I was like, me too. Glad you said something. Let's make sure we've got a menu for travel. But it's just things that, every other club I've gone to, that stuff's in place. You go away of England, there's a menu for every meal that you would eat. So it is fun to think about the things that just need to be put in place and people need to learn and be ready for. Like, even today, I'm like, whose balls are these, ours or theirs? Yeah. If they go in the stand, who's responsible for them? There wasn't a big goal at training for us to do a small-sided game. So they're just things that I'm like, in a year's time, we probably have a sheet and someone reaches out to the club and says, what are we going to have provided? But we don't think about all those things all the time at the moment. So there's a lot going on, and my small brain can only cope with so much. So yeah, pick which battles you try and win.
The other thing, I guess, is I'm sure, you have experience of players coming in a summer transfer or winter transfer window and getting them gelled into a squad. How do you gel 20 players who've maybe not met before or played that much before, and bond them before the league starts, get them on board at your style of play, all that kind of stuff? So 11 weeks maybe isn't that long. No,
it isn't. But to be honest, it's been really easy. So definitely there's a first amongst this group to, have this opportunity. And sometimes I think, especially with the way that football's developed so quickly in England, I'm not saying that, players aren't grateful, but there's almost like expectation rises really quickly with opportunity and what we're being provided. These are thirsty for this opportunity. And on top of that, the first thing I did was basically on the first week of the season, in terms of on the grass, I presented my story to them, and we went through a process of sharing stories. So each player was asked to highlight around 3 to 5 key moments in their career that reflected their values as an individual and kind of gave an insight into their journey and the ups and downs of that. As it's gone through, it's like Chinese whispers. It now just seems to be like a 15-slide, this is my life story. Mine was, quite specific. Theirs has been a little bit more rambly. But the one thing that's happened is really quickly, I asked them to do it because when I was at Brentford, I was able to spend some time with the guy that wrote the book Legacy. And he talks about, and I'm going to butcher this, but in New Zealand, I think it's called your papa hai. And it's basically your river, your mountain, and your town, your people. And you share that in every business meeting or anytime you meet someone new. And on the course I was on, the guy stood up and he was like, my river is the River Wey, my mountain is, Surrey Hills or whatever. And I kayaked, my main sport growing up was kayaking on flat water, and I kayaked on the River Wey from the age of 11 till 18. So immediately I was like, we've got something in common. And that's the power of it. The moment there's something in common, it's so much easier to connect. And we've just seen that from the moment I shared, and that included opening up about my mum and what she's going through. And then that kind of filtered through to my assistant, and then the players started doing it. There's just been a real appreciation that we've all shared a lot of ups and downs. We've, had great moments and low moments. There's been a ton of injuries. We've got things in common with each other that we never realised, like Sarah Dilling, one of our keepers, went and played at the World University Games in Taipei. I took the GB team as head coach. We were in the same place. We didn't even know each other. A number of our players have got, siblings with disabilities. That's like a connection across the group. And there's just so many things like that just came out that it's a really quick way of forging a relationship. And actually, one really powerful way that it's come out is we've got a great guy called Mac who's covering our goalkeeping coach who's coming from the UK. I should say his name, but I don't think it's been announced yet. So our goalkeeping coach joins on the 5th of May, and Mac's been covering him up until that point as goalkeeping coach. And now the club has taken him on as an analysis and kit, and he's going to do like a multiple role. But Mac didn't know the girls from Toffee the first day he came in, and he's the only man in the room. And he said to me, I want to do mine on Friday. I was like, okay, cool. And then it's really interesting. After he did it, the development of his relationship with the players fast-tracked so quickly. And like he shared, his mum's passed away. He shared that she was the person that got him into football, and being around them was super inspiring. And I didn't really realise it at the time, but the importance of him doing that really early changed his relationship with the players straight away. So we've also recorded all of them. So they're all on like a shared drive. So whether you came like Jackie last week or whether you've been there from the beginning, everyone is there for all the players to go and watch. So
love that.
We think it's been quite powerful, and we definitely feel quite together as a group as a result.
Absolutely. I mean, I spoke to one of your players for about 30 seconds and we found out she lived down the road from where I grew up in Ireland. So
there you go.
And she's not even Irish.
You feel part of it now. You're in.
Listen, I've got to support Calgary now. That's it. I guess, what can we expect from Calgary on the pitch? What kind of football are you hoping to play?
Yeah, I think for me it's been a really nice opportunity to bring together a lot of the learnings that I've had from different experiences. I inherited a group that, through where they've played, like a lot of them have been through the NCAA and been in America at different points. Like their mindset was probably quite direct, and I said to them from the start, like, I want to play. I want to get the ball down. I want us to play out from the back. I want us to be dominating the ball in games and having more control. And a real example of that is like early on in some of our 11v11s, like one of our right backs, she'd get the ball. She's a great player, by the way. She's going to be such high potential. She'd get the ball, there'd be space. She'd put it in behind and hope someone chases it. Or we'd get the ball wide and we just immediately cross it. And I was like, I don't want that. Like, I want us to have 3 players in the box if we're going to cross. And if we can't cross because we haven't got 3 in the box, then we're going to... What I'd say is I've taken a bit from everywhere I've been. Like, if you think about Arsenal's attacking play, they don't just cross it. They sustain attacks. And being with Jonas and listening to that and the setup, I've probably like stolen a little bit from there. I've stolen a little bit of how Brentford defend their box, because they literally man mark and they make sure that no one's free. And I've just picked the bits that as a coach, I'm like, I have a real affinity to that. That's what we're going to put into the DNA here. And it's been really nice to be able to do that from scratch. And yeah, to be able to set a style as we go. So yeah, definitely a possession style, really combative in terms of how we play. Our leadership describe us as scrappy. One of our team values is grit. So I hope that you see a team that wants to compete and play for each other on the pitch. But yeah, we spent almost 80% of our pre-season on our in possession. So if anything's going to look a little bit shaky tomorrow, there might be some moments where we look a bit disorganised in our press, because I'm like, the hardest thing to get them to do is to be confident on the ball and to change the culture here in Northern America, which I think is quite direct in terms of how teams want to play.
Yeah, sounds like a bit of a tapestry of your career is what you're bringing to the table, I guess, which is quite
that's
cool.
The plan.
More broadly in the league, do you feel like this could ultimately, and it's hard, it hasn't kicked off quite yet, but it ultimately could be a league where you're getting some big names in, and it's another league that challenges all the other top leagues in the world?
I think so. Like, the plan when you listen to Diana is that they want to be a top 5 league. And I think from a structure and an infrastructure perspective, like, that's already kind of happening. Me personally, a coach coming from England, I've met a lot of resistance when I've spoke to players in England about the league. There's been a number that we've approached and had good conversations with that are like, maybe I'll just wait and see what it looks like in 6 months. So I always say the players that are in the door now are the bravest, because 150 players get the chance to start this league. 22 get the chance to walk on the pitch tomorrow night and be the very first. And I think in 6 months' time, it will start to open up and more people will move. It was quite big for us that Jackie Burns obviously decided to leave the championship and come. And I think those types of names come in, getting minutes, playing well, are probably going to help the league to establish itself even more. But yeah, I think it just might take a little bit of time, but I think it's going to change pretty quickly. I think by next Christmas, recruitment will be a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess as well now we've got Casey Stoney over at the national team. Nat Henderson has joined her.
Yep.
Do you feel that link, that closeness, knowing that there's other English coaches in and around you?
Yeah, I think the important thing as a coach is to keep relationships and communication. Ironically, I actually messaged Casey yesterday because the TSN team that I was just speaking to, they reached out to the club 10 days ago and were like, we want your starting 11 in your formation. And I was like, sorry,
I heard
what?
about this.
Haven't even named it with the group. And then yesterday they came to training and like again asked, like, do you think? And I'm like, so I text Casey because they were like, Bev gave it to us at one point with Canada, and I was like, I can't see Casey giving that up. So I messaged Casey immediately on the bus home and was like, am I going bonkers or is this just not normal? And she was like, I'd maybe give it for a friendly. She was like, but I absolutely won't be giving it for any competitive Canadian game. She said it is a very Northern American thing. But it was funny when I bumped into Anya this morning. That was the first question I asked her. Are you giving them yours?
Can I have it?
Yeah. Well, they just said to me, if you want to guess what Vancouver is, I was like, I can tell you what I think they're going to play. How about you tell me what you think they're going to play? But yeah, so things like that are a bit odd. But yeah, just, you know.
How much are you looking forward to the game?
I'm so excited. Like the opportunity to manage on a, you know, in a stadium like this and to be part of that first. Like the players are the first of the 22. Like I'm one of two coaches that gets to step out on this sideline tomorrow and be part of, you know, the first game in this league that hopefully in years to come people will look back on this and talk about how the league has developed, and that's just a really exciting opportunity. And you know, I've done a few different things now in my career, but ultimately I want to keep progressing as a coach and get more and more opportunities to be able to develop and lead. So this is just the start, hopefully, of another really cool journey.
And I guess it's a hard question, but what are the goals for this season? It is quite an unknown, isn't it?
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, I think definitely get into the championship playoffs. I mean, everyone wants to win it. Our players talk about that. You know, Sonia O'Neill says it a lot. There's only going to be one team that's remembered for doing that this year. I think it's really hard at the start when you haven't played any of the teams in pre-season to really know where everyone sits and fits. But I think for us, I say to the players, I've sat through so many stories where they've talked about toxic cultures, like wanting to give up playing football. For me, my job this year and for our club and how we want our club to run is that the players have the best experience that they've could possibly have in football, that they enjoy coming to work every day, that they learn and they get better on the pitch, and that we have great performances that hopefully lead to really great results. And if when they're sitting and sharing their story in 10 years time at, you know, another club, they can turn around and say, do you know what, that was the best year of my career, then I think internally that gives me a lot of motivation. Externally, I want to win games of football. Like, I want to win the game tomorrow night and I want to build from that. But it's a long season with 25 games, and we had one player arrive last Thursday. So I'm like, you know, and a number of players arrived 2 weeks ago. So whilst we've done a lot of work, we've still got a ton to keep going with, and it's only going to get stronger as we play more games, we review them well, and we're in a better place. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And finally, the most important question, tell our listeners about the sledding.
Yeah, so
Baxter.
We had the perfect week of Calgary weather 2 weeks ago. We had snow on Monday, Tuesday morning, and by Saturday, it said it was 12 degrees, but I walked around in shorts and t-shirts and had to put Factor 50 on. So the sun is really warm when it's out. But yeah, on the Wednesday morning, I woke up, my assistant was out of town, so I was kind of managing the ship that week on my own. And I thought, there's this lovely little hill just outside the Village ice cream store, and I'd seen some kids on it at the weekend. And I'd got a bit of envy watching them with their parents going down it. And I thought, well, there's no one around. So I messaged KG, our team manager, in the morning. I was like, can you get me a sled? She was like, leave it with me.
What an ask.
Yeah, leave it with me. She's used to it now. Anyway, so by the time I got to training, she had 2 different sleds in the back of the car. And I finished training, took it home, went and said hello to the dog, left him, went out on the slope. And I've got a great video, I'll have to send it to you, of me holding him, sledding down. Because once I'd had a bit of fun, I was like, I need to share the joy with the dog. I'm not sure he thought it was as much fun. But I'm like, these are just the moments. Like, I think in my first month, I finished work and went and watched a half-pipe snowboard women's final in the evening for free. And they gave you hot chocolate whilst you were watching it. And then a week later, I was like, okay, cool, let's get some ski stuff and go skiing. Like, I think there's a certain point in your career where, like, I want to manage big games, but I'm watching coaches burn out left, right and centre and fall out of love with the game. Like, this for me is a really exciting opportunity to have a much better work-life balance. It's still tough. I'm still working a ton. We're understaffed compared to every club I've ever worked in before, but we've got good people and an unbelievable culture and country to experience while we're at it. So going to take in every moment and enjoy it.
I was going to say, embrace every moment and embrace the moment tomorrow when that first whistle goes and the journey starts.
Canadian national anthem.
You gonna sing it?
I don't know it. I even need
It starts
to learn
with
it.
"Oh Canada," I know that
Does
much.
it? I might have to try and learn it overnight. I said to Story as we were walking out earlier, there was a national anthem playing, and I was like, I need to learn the Canadian national anthem by tomorrow. She was like, well, not that one. That's the American one. I was like, brilliant. Maybe I'll
Great start.
get the right one. But yeah, no, it'll be cool.
Well, you might have a Calgary fan in me. I think Sophie will be harder to convince. She's Vancouver through and through for a very long time, but I'll back you guys.
Don't talk to us. Yeah.
Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for talking to us.
Pleasure.